The aliens' bodies exploded into chunks of flesh as the primitive human bullets tore through them, splattering purple blood across the walls. "That, cadets, is why you never underestimate human weaponry," Gunnery Sergeant Miles O'Brien said, his gravelly voice filling the lecture hall. The battle-scarred veteran stood at the podium, his heavily muscled frame covered in faded scars and old tattoos. O'Brien continued, "It was 50 years ago during the First Contact War. Humanity had just started colonizing planets outside our solar system. 10,000 civilians lived on Epsilon Eridani III, protected by only 500 UEF Marines led by Captain Adam Wright. That's when the Malon found us, a technologically advanced alien race led by their arrogant Supreme Commander Xander. His warriors had plasma rifles and energy shields. Xander thought he could just land on our colony and demand we surrender. Captain Wright knew his small garrison was outgunned and outnumbered 100 to 1, but he refused to let the colonists be enslaved or butchered, so he challenged Xander to a duel, to buy time to evacuate the civilians. Xander laughed when he saw Wright's 9mm pistol and combat knife. To him our weapons were primitive toys compared to his advanced tech, but Wright's eyes burned with defiance as they faced each other, surrounded by human and Malon warriors. Our entire species' fate hung on this moment. The civilians would never escape in time if Wright fell quickly, and if humanity was seen as weak, the Malon would hunt us to extinction. So Wright had to win, and he had to win with our human weapons, bullets forged on Earth. Only then would the aliens know the true strength of humanity's spirit. Only then would the Malon fear us. Xander raised his plasma rifle, cackling with arrogance. Wright gripped his pistol, his hand steady. The two leaders stared each other down, neither blinking. Then Xander aimed and fired. A searing plasma bolt streaked towards Wright's chest, hot enough to vaporize flesh and bone. Time seemed to slow. Wright had only a split second to survive and show the aliens what humans were made of. O'Brien took a swig of whiskey, savoring the burn as he continued his tale. Wright dove to the side, barely dodging Xander's plasma bolt. The two leaders crashed together, locked in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Xander was stronger and faster, his advanced armor deflecting Wright's blows. But our captain was a master of MC map, Marine Corps martial arts. He went for quick, precise strikes at the aliens' joints and pressure points. Xander snarled in frustration, unable to land a solid hit. He'd expected to crush Wright in seconds, but the human was holding his own. Enraged, Xander lunged forward recklessly, leaving an opening. Wright kicked him right in the knee servos, then hammered his temple with an elbow. The Malon staggered back, stunned. Wright didn't hesitate. He drew his pistol and unloaded 3 rounds point-blank into Xander's face. The 9mm FMJs punched through his weakened shields and tore into his skull. Purple gore splattered as Xander dropped, dead before he hit the ground. The Malon couldn't believe it. Their leader killed by a primitive slug thrower. They opened up with a barrage of plasma bolts, determined to vaporize Wright. But our engineers had been busy. They'd reverse-engineered alien shield tech, and it held against the plasma. The Marines opened up with prototype Gauss rifles and railguns. The hypersonic projectiles cut through the Malons like a chainsaw. Then their ships started bombarding the colony, leveling buildings with massive plasma cannons. But the cavalry had arrived. The UEF Navy tore out of slipspace with guns blazing. Swarm missiles, graviton beams, and old-fashioned cannons took on the Malon fleet. It was a slugfest, but we had numbers, and damn if we weren't going to make them pay in blood for every inch of human soil. O'Brien took another swig of whiskey, the ice cubes clinking in his glass. But that wasn't the end of it, cadets. As the Malon turned tail and ran, we found something interesting floating dead in space. A crippled Malon scout ship drifting on the edge of the Eridani system. Admiral Hackett dispatched a squad of Marines to board it and grab any intel or survivors. The team was led by Lieutenant Chris Maverick Johnson, a real hotshot. They cut their way into the scout ship's airlock and stormed inside, rifles ready. It was dead quiet, emergency lights flickering. They figured the crew had evacuated, until they heard a groan coming from the engine room. They found a Malon engineer slumped against the reactor, purple blood leaking from a nasty shrapnel wound. His name was Zoran, and his buddies had left him behind like yesterday's garbage. But lucky for him, Lieutenant Johnson was fluent in the Malon language. He could have just taken Zoran prisoner, but he had a better idea. Johnson made him an offer he couldn't refuse: switch sides and spill the beans on Malon Tech, and we'd patch him up and grant him asylum. Zoran was terrified of Xander, but with him dead he didn't owe the Malon squat, so he sang like a canary. Turns out the Malon had been watching us for months, scoping out our colonies, fleet movements, weapons, everything. Xander's dear old dad, Emperor Zorgan, wanted to conquer us and strip our worlds bare for the Malon war machine. They thought we'd be pushovers, but we'd given them a nasty surprise, and now Zoran was our secret weapon. Our eggheads worked round the clock with Zoran to reverse-engineer Malon Tech and beef up our arsenal. Antimatter bombs, phase-shift armor, combat exoskeletons that moved with your mind. We made 100 years' progress in months. And when the other colonies heard about our victory, they all wanted in on the action. Practically overnight, we went from a bunch of scattered frontier worlds to the United Terran Alliance, one big fist ready to punch the Malon right in their ugly snouts. President Nakamura got everyone in line and on a war footing. Because we all knew the Malon would be back, and this time it would be all or nothing. Humanity was going to have to fight like never before. O'Brien's voice dropped low. But the Malon, they didn't take defeat lying down. Emperor Zorgan was spitting nails over losing at Epsilon Eridani, and his boy Zoran turning traitor. So he rounded up the biggest damn fleet you ever saw, over 1,000 battlecruisers, destroyers, troop transports, a regular armada of death. They came at us with everything they had, hitting our shipyards, our colonies, even civilian targets. It was like trying to hold back the tide with a Dixie cup. We had the tech edge, but they had the numbers. For every ship we blasted, 3 more took its place. President Nakamura, she knew we were on the ropes. We needed a game changer, and fast. That's when the eggheads at R&D came to her with this crazy idea, the singularity bomb. In theory, it could rip a small black hole in the fabric of space-time. Nothing could escape that kind of gravity well, not even Malon shields. Nakamura gave the order to prep the prototype for deployment at Proxima Centauri. That's where the Malon fleet was massing for the final push. Maverick volunteered to fly the bomb right into their formation. Guess he figured he owed us for patching him up after Epsilon Eridani. The battle. It was like Armageddon out there. UTA and Malon ships duking it out at point-blank range, missiles and plasma bolts flying everywhere. Maverick, that crazy bastard, he flew his Raptor right through the crossfire, bobbing and weaving like a prize fighter. He armed the bomb and aimed his bird straight at the Malone flagship. Their point defense cannons tore his ship to shreds, but not before he hit the detonator. That tiny black hole swallowed up Zorgon's dreadnought like it was nothing. Then it started pulling in everything else. Malon ships, UTA ships, even the wrecks and debris. It was like watching a school of piranhas devour a whale carcass. When it was over, the Malon fleet was gutted. Zorgon limped away with his tail between his legs, but we'd paid a hell of a price ourselves. Maverick, my Marines, a whole UTA battle group, all gone, swallowed by the very weapon that saved our asses. Both sides were battered and bleeding. We called a ceasefire, then hammered out the Treaty of Proxima. On paper it was the end of the war, but for those of us who fought it, who lost friends and loved ones, it sure didn't feel like victory. O'Brien drained the last of his whiskey as the lecture hall fell silent. The cadets looked shell-shocked, like they were just starting to realize the weight of the uniform they'd put on. Hell, maybe they were. The old gunny's eyes went distant, like he was seeing faces long gone. Friends, brothers in arms, even enemies, all just ghosts now. Because that's the other thing they don't put in the history books. The scars you carry, the ones that don't show. The memories that keep you up at night wondering if there was something else you could have done. But the old gunny wasn't finished spinning his yarn just yet. He fixed the cadets with a steely gaze, his voice low and grave. Y'all thought that was the end of it, not by a long shot. See, we'd celebrated too soon, let our guard down. And the Malon, those sneaky bastards, they'd been biding their time. O'Brien took a long pull from his whiskey, the ice clinking against the glass. Turns out, Zoran, that turncoat son of a bitch, he'd been playing us for fools all along. While we were busy patting ourselves on the back, he was slipping the Malin all our secrets, showing them how to build their own damn singularity bomb. The cadets shifted uneasily in their seats, a palpable tension filling the air. O'Brien pressed on, his voice rising with barely contained anger. And build it they did. They hit us out of nowhere, a surprise attack right on Earth itself. Singularity bombs raining down on our cities, our factories, our homes, millions dead in the blink of an eye. He slammed his fist on the podium, the sound echoing through the hall. We were caught with our britches down, still licking our wounds from the last tussle. Our defences were in shambles, our fleet scattered. It was all we could do to keep from getting our asses handed to us on a silver platter. O'Brien's eyes grew distant, as if he were reliving the horror of those dark days. President Nakamura, she knew we were backed into a corner, so she rolled the dice one last time, ordered a preemptive strike on the Malin homeworld, a balls-to-the-wall gambit with everything on the line. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. They sent Captain Wright, the hero of Epsilon Eridani, to lead the charge, a fleet of stealth ships, armed to the teeth with our own singularity bombs. They slipped past the Malon defences and let loose holy hell on their weapons factories, their shipyards, their command centres. O'Brien's voice caught in his throat, a flicker of pain crossing his weathered face. But Wright and his crew, they didn't make it out. The Malon, they captured 'em, put 'em on trial for war crimes. And then, in front of the whole damn galaxy, they executed 'em, broadcasted on every channel just to twist the knife. He fell silent for a moment, the weight of the memory hanging heavy in the air. When he spoke again, his voice was hollow, tinged with a bitter resignation. The Malon, they finally surrendered after that, unconditional-like. We'd broken their backs, their will to fight, but the cost, Christ, the cost. O'Brien looked out over the sea of young faces, his expression grim. We won, sure, but what did we become in the process? We'd used their own dirty tactics against 'em, crossed lines we swore we never would, and now we're the ones occupying their space, calling the shots. Makes you wonder, who were the real monsters in the end? He drained the last of his whiskey, slamming the empty glass down on the podium. That's the lesson of the first contact war, cadets. There ain't no clean victories, no unsullied heroes, just a bunch of scared, desperate folks clawing and scraping to survive in a cold, dark universe, and the scars we carry, the ones that never heal. The old gunny straightened his jacket, his eyes burning with a fierce intensity. But by God, we're still here, still standing, and as long as there's breath in our lungs and fight in our hearts, we'll keep on standing, because that's what it means to be human, to stare into the abyss and spit in its eye, to keep pushing forward, even when all hope seems lost. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.